Welcome back to Interview Ninja Step 44. We're going to be using critical analytical thinking, sometimes called CAT, to talk about 5W2H, which in English stands for who, what, why, when, where, how, and how much. We start with talking about interactions with other people whilst at work, and how pretty well any kind of job can be useful for developing your emotional, your social, and your applied functional intelligences, which are the missing areas in most academic education. The next 3 or 4 steps of this Interview Ninja course are going to be based on a much longer session with Corben, which was the 9th session we had in his quite intensive coaching process.
And basically using John Mayer as a template.
Yes.
As a kind of role model.
He's come back a lot, hasn't he? Yeah. Into our sessions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got the impression, I certainly admire his music.
Yeah.
And his lyrics and so on. And, you can have any number of role models that you choose, but I think there's a lot about him that I think is quite similar in personality to yourself.
Well, I really like John Mayer's music. I think he's a cool guy.
Yeah, he's cool.
I think but not just cool, I think he writes like proper songs.
Yes.
And he's popular now, but he writes songs that aren't just trash.
Yeah.
And still does well. So
he's an authentic musician.
Yeah.
He does, he composes, and music is really important to him. He sings, he plays, he performs, and he's handled himself in an interesting way. The background to his life's been a bit of a roller coaster, but I think he's come through it very, very well. He's come out the other end a very balanced person, and I admire that. And I think the path that you're choosing in creativity is a roller coaster, and clearly it does destroy a lot of people. The system destroys a lot of people, just minces them up, and we don't want that for you, do we?
No, I don't particularly want to be minced.
No. So anything we could do to prepare you for the battles ahead, and I'm assuming, you will experience those battles as you become successful. So they're not negative battles, although, if you're not successful, then you have to.
Yes.
We'll have to think of other people and other ways to help you with that. Okay, so I've been analysing John Mayer's lyrics on a sort of a song-by-song, verse-by-verse basis. I've been looking at them from the point of view of critical. That book I gave you on critical analysis of literature.
Yeah.
And so I've done a couple of books I've gone through a couple of books and annotated them, because you say you quite like reading my notes.
I like your little annotations, yes.
Yeah. So I've gone through one on the analysis of English literature, and one on the analysis of poetry. And that's because there is no book, as far as I can see, on the analysis of lyrics.
Poetry is probably as close as you're going to get, right?
I think so. And so to bridge that gap, one of the things I'm very much hoping to teach you is, or to help you understand, is critical thinking, how to think critically. It's a science and an art.
Yes, we've spoken about
something you have to practice.
Moving on to this before, haven't we?
Yeah. So I want to, you're not going to university, but you can effectively treat life outside your experiences as being truly in the university of life. So if you apply critical thinking to the world as you experience it, then you'll increase your learning, your understanding, and that in turn will increase your ability to optimize and make the progress that you want and fulfill your potential. So that's the aspiration. Let's just talk briefly about how you've been doing so far. because let's say it's been 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. And at least. And in that time, you've had a job and you've had 2 jobs. So let's just briefly tell me and tell our audience, which we should be visualizing.
1 morning shift at Marks and Spencer's as a customer assistant.
Explain what Marks and Spencer's is.
A supermarket. Yes.
Okay.
A convenience store.
Okay.
As they might call it in America.
Okay.
And then I have 1 all-day job at the theatre, the pantomime, working as a sound technician.
We are moving into talking about the world of work. I've spoken before about the 4 different kinds of intelligence we all have: emotional, social, applied functional, sometimes called practical, and academic intelligence, sometimes called IQ. Early work experience is an opportunity to develop your non-academic intelligences, which are the most important for most kinds of work in the real world. Going to work, especially where there are people to interact with, is a great place to learn social skills and interpersonal dynamics.
Let's take them one at a time.
Yes.
The first one you mentioned, what were you doing in your job?
Stacking shelves and serving customers. And if I'm honest, I didn't enjoy it. Probably won't do that again. But see, I was trying to think about what we were talking about with everything that I was doing. And there's always, obviously, interactions with people, no matter what job you do normally. So I was kind of looking out for it, but there's only so much. Well, that's not true. I played games on tills by seeing. I don't know. Let's get on to it. We'll get onto that in a minute. But I enjoyed that kind of. And where am I going? I'm on a limb here. Where am I?
A few minutes ago, I seeded the concept of critical analytical thinking, what I call CAT. The idea is that building your CAT soft skills gives you a set of rules to apply to different kinds of complex issues or situations. Here, as we go on talking, I have called it structured thinking to keep things simple and help Corben to focus.
Well, I've let you hang out a bit, but here's the advantage of structured thinking. Okay.
Yes.
Now, when I asked you that question, if you already had structured thinking, you might have gone through who, what, why, when, where, how, and how much, for example.
Yes.
Okay. So you might have gone through who you worked with, what you did, why you chose to be in that particular job, when you were in it, where were you in it, how did you get the job, how much did you, So,
whereas I just jumped straight in the middle and lost my train of thought straight away.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the value of having a mental...
Well, that was a good example. I immediately ran out of things to say. And
but if you have... But that's the whole point, is systematic approaches to everything are potentially valuable. They mustn't take over. So it's left brain, right brain, right? But if someone asks you to do something, perhaps you make a choice. Am I going to respond to this through a systematic model that I'm going to use, okay? Or am I going to free flow it in a creative, emotional, from the heart or whatever? But what we're trying to do is integrated thinking, feeling, type behaviors rather than one or the other. So you don't want to be over systematic, but as you just found out, if you haven't got some kind of general approach
or structure,
then you're not going to. Well, you might flounder as you did.
Yes.
Okay. So now let's try.
I developed 5W2H about 40 years ago when I was meeting a lot of senior executives and only had a few minutes to find out what I needed to know. I was fed up with coming out of a meeting and 3 minutes later thinking, I wish you had asked them this. Using it well is a soft skill that is well worth developing. It relates to developing your applied functional intelligence, your AFI or practical intelligence, we call it sometimes. There is stuff about that kind of thing on YouTube, and especially the so-called Kipling questioning method, but it goes back at least as far as Aristotle. I added the other H letter there, how much, because I was selling and needed to know about things like budgets, and I didn't want to ask my client, how much money have you got to spend? But I certainly did need to know how much money was potentially available and the scale of the project, and was I wasting my time, and was I wasting his time or her time as well? You need to adapt it to your own language, because who, what, why, they're English words, you may have different words, and you need to adapt it to the situation you're in, and especially don't feel obliged to ask all 7 types of question. Cherry pick out the ones that are relevant, so before you go into a meeting, or if you can plan for a conversation, think, what do I really want to know? And then when you're in the conversation, if it's flowing well, stick on some extra questions and maybe even just shut up and listen and see what other things come out of the conversation, because sometimes that's where the very best information comes from, once you've stopped talking and asking.
Yeah.
Using the model.
Okay,
But
so
first of all, tell me what the model is.
who, what, why, where, when, and how much is the model that I was.
I call it 5W2H, which is my own particular nomenclature, and it only works in the UK where those words.
Nomenclature.
Nomenclature is applying a word to a thing or a method of talking. Okay?
So
it comes from the Latin of nomen. Think 5W2H. Now populate that with the words, and that's your framework. Okay, so that's why we call it 5W2H, which is short for, and that gives you the cues in your mind for what's the structure, and then the structure gives you the cues for the other part of your mind. So this is how the brain works. It's how people remember lots and lots of things, like all the cards in a pack or 5 packs of cards. It's building building models. They help you do things. So we start with 5W2H, okay? So what's a system? Populate 5W2H for me.
Who, what, why, where, when, and how much.
How and how much.
How and how much.
That's why it's 5W2H.
Yes.
Do it again.
Who, what, why, where, when, how, and how much.
Yes. Okay?
Who, what, why, where, when, how, and how much.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
So you get it really, really fluent in your mind.
Who, what, why,
so just like when you drove here in your car, is your car a stick shift or an automatic?
It's a manual.
Okay.
A stick shift.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But did you think when you came up the hill what gear you were in?
Not really.
No, whether you were in 3rd or 4th or what have you. You
not
didn't.
Really. Well.
Because it was automatic.
Yes.
So what we need is these models to be automatic. You shouldn't actually need to think about them. You get so used to using them.
In particular situations, so that they are just there. So are you saying that you have to be careful to balance this with the other side of your brain? Yes, very careful. In step 45, we're going to talk about the importance of keeping balance between the rational side of your mind when using these thinking models and the improvisation, spontaneous, creative side of your mind, which adds just as much value, sometimes even more. And also, along with that balance, the balance between your emotional, your social, and your applied functional intelligences, as well as the academic intelligence, and how you have developed them. Only through the harmony of the whole way your mind is working can you really empower yourself to achieve your full potential. Party on.